The Ember War Chronicles Book 5 of the Galactic War Saga. Echoes of the First Flame. Chapter 1. The world that should not be. There was no sound in the place between stars. No pulse of time, no tether of gravity, no echo of the galaxies that spun and flickered in the realms beyond. Just a gray endlessness, like the belly of a dream that forgot how to wake. And in that dream drifted the Ashwake. She was still whole, though barely. Her hull bore the scars of journey, not measured by space, but by memory. Her engines rested dormant, waiting for a reality they could understand. Her systems flickered between recognition and confusion. Inside, Lyra breathed. She did not wake. Not fully. Not yet. Flame thread pulsed beneath her skin, dim and steady. But there was something else now. Something woven into her soul when the shard shattered. A presence. Not the silent flame. Not quite. This was older. Quieter. It did not demand. It remembered. Her mind swam in fractured images, stars that bled light, voices that called her name in languages no one spoke, a heart the size of a continent pulsing once beneath a dying sun. And then the shape that was not a ship, not a god, but a rewrite. A beginning that had never ended. She awoke in a command chair. Everything was dim. The ship floated in a twilight void where nothing orbited, and yet the pressure of gravity pressed against the hull. Outside the viewports, the stars were wrong, burning backward, spiraling inward, as if trying to hide from her gaze. Ralph's voice echoed over the comm. "We're alive, I think." Grief followed moments later. Alive is a flexible term right now. Kael spoke last. Calm. Firm. This is the vein. Lyra blinked, trying to focus. What's the vein? Kael moved into the bridge slowly, his face pale beneath the ancient armor. Where flame thread was first forged. Not in fire, but in forgetting. The place where memory and time first collided. The place where the flame was born. We are inside the first flame's echo, and it remembers us. Far below them, on a plain of dead light and buried song, the Leviathan stirred. The one Lyra had seen in the last chapter of the last galaxy. It did not breathe. It did not wake, but waited. The Ashwake's systems flickered and rebooted with new information. Star maps drawn in reverse constellations, coordinates that could not exist, logs written in names no one had ever spoken aloud, and a signal pulsed from the Leviathan below. Not a distress call. A door. Opening. Chapter 2. Beneath the Pulse. The descent began in silence. The Ashwake's stabilizers engaged cautiously, as though the ship itself was unsure whether this place could be trusted. Beneath them sprawled a vast terrain of metallic ridges and petrified valleys, lifeless and ancient, yet humming with a rhythm that could not be measured by sound. The Leviathan lay at the center of it all, a broken titan fused to the landscape, its body rising from a stone like a monument half buried by the centuries. Its spine ran like a mountain range. Its limbs were lost beneath sediment and ash, but its chest still pulsed faintly like a memory trying to become real. Ral stood at the forward viewport, one hand braced against the glass. "That thing is the size of a small continent," Gree replied through gritted teeth. "If it twitches, it'll kill us by accident." Kael watched in silence. He had known of the vein, but never thought it would open again. This place had been sealed long before the flame-bound accord collapsed. Long before the gates fractured. Long before Lyra had been born. But the flame had chosen her. And now, it had brought her here. The away team suited up and descended by lander, flame thread anchors firing into the brittle crust of the surface as they made contact. The ground was solid, but only just. Each step echoed through the bones of the world. Lyra led them toward the Leviathan's heart. It was not a chamber, not a structure. It was a wound. A hollow burned deep into the Titan's chest, ringed with scorched alloy and crusted flame thread. Dead, but twitching. In its center pulsed a sphere of light, spinning so slowly it seemed still. Not fire, not energy, memory. Kael exhaled, reverent. That's it. The core of the first flame. the echo that survived the sealing. Lyra stepped closer. The light responded, softening, expanding. Reaching for her, Ralph's voice came through low. This feel like a trap to anyone else? Gree replied, through static. This whole damn place is a trap. Lyra ignored them. She raised her hand, and the sphere brightened. She heard a whisper, not from outside, but from within her own thoughts. Do you remember? She did. Her mother's voice. A song half-hummed in a half-remembered room. Her first touch of flame thread. The first time she saw the stars turn away. She remembered everything. And in that moment, the sphere pulsed once, then split open. A shock wave rolled across the surface. The lander was thrown from its perch. Kael caught Ral mid-fall, bracing as the crust cracked beneath them. Gree screamed through the comms, instruments flaring in every spectrum. Lyra stood untouched. In front of her, the hollow core had become a doorway. Inside it shimmered a corridor made of flame thread and shadow, winding endlessly downward into the Leviathan's body. Ral pulled himself upright, breathing hard. We're not going down there, right? Kael stepped forward. We have to. This is not a ruin. This is a test. And we've already passed the first. Lyra walked into the corridor, her flame burning steady. Ral followed, cursing under his breath. Gree hesitated, then stepped to behind them. Kael brought up the rear. As the last of them crossed the threshold, the doorway sealed behind them, quietly, without force, as though the Leviathan had simply closed its eyes. Chapter 3. The Dream Engine. The corridor wound impossibly deep through the Leviathan's body. Its walls weren't built, they were grown. Veins of dormant flame thread lined the surface like fossilized thought. The deeper they went, the less their suits registered. No temperature, no pressure, no gravity. Yet their feet still found purchase. Their lungs still pulled air. Their minds began to change. Gree stumbled first. He froze mid-step, blinking hard, then looked around with a strange calm. We've been here before. Ral turned, frowning. No, we haven't. Gree didn't respond. He just kept walking, eyes distant, as if chasing something only he could see. Lyra felt it too. Not confusion, not memory. Recognition. The deeper they moved, the more the corridor seemed to anticipate them. Each bend revealed symbols they hadn't seen a moment before. Patterns in the walls mimicked their footsteps. Shadows rippled just out of sync with their movements. Kael broke the silence. This isn't architecture. It's interface. Lyra turned to him. You mean a machine? No, a being. And we're inside its dream. They entered a circular chamber carved from crystalline material, smooth as glass, but thrumming like a living heart. In its center hovered a sphere, larger than the one on the surface, this one cracked and spinning faster. It showed them images, not as projections, but as shared visions. The Leviathans standing before the first flame, not as warriors, but as mourners. The silent flame rising not from conflict, but from grief. A galaxy born not in chaos, but in memory, so old it forgot itself. Lyra gasped as the visions struck her mind like lightning across still water. They didn't create the flame. They became it. Ral staggered back, hands on his head. We're inside the moment. Everything changed. Gree collapsed to his knees. And it's remembering us back. The chamber pulsed. A second corridor opened across from them. But this one was different. No light, only darkness. Kael stepped forward. This is the core, where the first flame sleeps. Lyra felt the pull before she moved. The thread within her flared, hotter than ever before, but not in warning. An invitation. She stepped through the dark. Inside, the air vanished. There was no space, only memory. And in the center of that memory stood a figure, human in shape, made of shifting flame and fading shadow. It turned. Lyra's breath caught in her chest. It had no face, and yet somehow she knew it. The voice that entered her mind was ancient, quiet, and filled with longing. You're the echo, and I'm the first fire. Everything around her exploded in light. Chapter 4. The One Who Burned. Light was not light in the chamber. It was thought, memory, resonance. It pressed against Lyra not like heat, but like truth, undeniable and overwhelming. She stood adrift in it, surrounded by impressions of stars being born and unborn, leviathans awakening from oceans of silence, and the sound of warships singing themselves into existence. The figure made of fire and shadow watched her. It had no eyes, yet she felt its gaze. No mouth, yet its presence whispered in every part of her mind. You carry the shard, the words came not as sound, but as certainty. You broke the seal with your memory, you walked willingly into the forgetting Lyra, stood her ground, flame thread pulsing steadily in her chest. What are you? The figure stepped closer, its form flickering through iterations. First a human outline, then something more, something that shifted between Leviathan and light, between forgotten soldier and celestial storyteller. I am the first story, the one that had to be buried so the others could survive. I am what remained when flame forgot itself. Ral's voice crackled through Lyra's comms, static-laced and distant. Lyra, talk to me, Gree. She's gone dark. Core signals are looping, Kael. Pull her out now, or she won't come back. She didn't respond. Couldn't, because now the fire was inside her, and it was showing her the truth. Visions crashed into her. The Leviathans were not weapons of war. They were guardians, each tethered to a truth too vast for minds alone to carry. The flame was not created. It was born of loss, an ancient species dying so quietly their passing ignited reality itself. The silent flame was not evil. It was grief, raw and vast, seeking to remember what had been taken. And the gates? Not pathways, graves, each one a sealed memory, until they were opened again, until her. The being before her extended a hand. You are not its enemy, you are its heir. The flame thread in Lyra's chest ignited, fully, wildly. She cried out as her body was filled with heat, with presence, with 1,000 timelines trying to braid themselves into her veins. And then darkness, total and sudden. She awoke on the floor of the chamber. Ral and Kael crouched over her. Gree hovered nearby, his eyes wide. You flatlined for 40 seconds. Ral's voice was raw. You weren't breathing. Lyra sat up slowly. She didn't feel burned. She felt lit. The being was gone, but something inside her had changed. They exited the chamber in silence, the corridor behind them sealing like a wound sutured shut. Kael watched her carefully. What did it show you? She turned to face the Leviathan's heart. Not what's coming. What was always here, waiting to be remembered. And below them, beneath the skin of the world, something moved again. The Leviathan's pulse accelerated. Its eye opened. Chapter 5. Leviathan Stirs. The pulse echoed through the crust. It wasn't seismic, not in the traditional sense. The ground didn't quake, the structures didn't collapse, and nothing was displaced. Yet every atom in the atmosphere seemed to shift with it. Lyra stood at the edge of the Leviathan's heart, staring into the horizon beyond the chamber's rim. She could feel the awakening in her bones. Her breath shortened, not from fear, but from pressure, like the space around her had thickened with purpose. Kael turned slowly toward the distant horizon. Its waking Gree ran diagnostics from his arm console, wiping away the static and distortion with trembling fingers. No power surge, no movement, no visual confirmation. Ral cut in sharply. Then why does it feel like something's breathing through the planet? The surface around them began to change. Crystalline ridges, once inert, began glowing. Faint lines of memory energy pulsing through their edges. Pathways once sealed split open like blooming circuitry. The symbols on the Leviathan's skin, the ones that had remained dormant for eons, began to shift and reconfigure in real time. They weren't inscriptions. They were thoughts. Lyra stared, eyes wide. It's communicating. Kael nodded slowly. No, not just that. It's learning us. Back aboard the Ashwake, the systems came back online without command. Star maps redrew themselves. New navigation paths flickered across the hollow projector, routes that didn't exist on any known charts. A new Leviathan gate, one not previously recorded, flared to life. Gree's voice dropped to a whisper. That gate leads outside charted space, far beyond even the fringe sectors. Raoul narrowed his eyes. Why would it want us to go there? Kael's answer was immediate. Because it remembers what lies beyond, and it wants us to see it. Lyra remained on the surface as the others returned to the ship. The wind had changed. It now carried a sound too low to register as audible, yet her flame thread resonated with it like an echo from within. She closed her eyes, and for a heartbeat, just one, she felt the Leviathan's mind touch hers. Not as a being, not as a weapon, but as a witness. And it showed her a vision, a fleet of ash-colored ships drifting without pilots. A planet split open to reveal a lattice of memory silk and fire. And behind it all, a second Leviathan. Not broken, not sleeping, but waiting. And it was not alone. Her eyes snapped open. She whispered the words before she understood them. It's not just one. There's another, and it remembers me. Chapter 6. The Forgotten Leviathan. The ashwake surged upward through the veined atmosphere, leaving behind the pulse field of the first Leviathan. But none of them looked back. The crew was silent, each gripped by what Lyra had seen, by what the flame had shown her. Not one Leviathan. Two, and the second was not sleeping. The newly revealed Leviathan gate burned at the edge of known space, hidden in a cold sector that once held nothing but gravitational static. It was unlike the others. Twisted, jagged, and incomplete. It shimmered with distorted memory flame, as if it were still deciding whether or not it should exist. Kael watched it from the bridge, quiet and still. This gate wasn't made for transit. It was made to contain. Raoul glanced sideways. Contain what? Kael didn't answer. Lyra did. A Leviathan that chose not to forget. They passed through the gate. The moment they did, everything changed. Space twisted, not just in shape but in meaning. Coolness bent. Time lagged. Stars refused to be observed. The sensor screamed and then went blind. Communications failed. Even thoughts felt slower. And then they saw it. The second Leviathan. It was larger. So much larger. While the first lay buried and broken beneath a planet's surface, this one hovered above a shattered world like a god in mourning. Its body was darker, woven through with scorched flame thread. Its shape was less defined. Fluid, half-shifted into something the mind refused to process fully. And worse, it was awake. Not moving, but aware. Watching. Gree's voice came through the static. Is it alive? Lyra shook her head, though she couldn't explain why. It's more than that. It remembers everything the other one chose to forget. They approached slowly, the ashwake maintaining distance. Then a signal flared. Direct. Personal. It came in through Lyra's thread, bypassing ship systems entirely. One word. Kulme. She stood in the airlock. Alone. Raoul and Gree protested. Kael watched, but she knew. The invitation wasn't for them. She stepped off the ship and floated toward the Leviathan's surface, drawn by an unseen path across a void that didn't quite behave like vacuum. The Leviathan shifted as she neared. Not physically, existentially. Its structure rippled, like a dream trying to remember its shape. Then a hatch opened. Not a mechanical one, but a rift, a parting in time, and Lyra entered it without hesitation. Inside, there was only light. Not blinding, not warm, just there. She stood in a chamber of still flame, where silence hung like gravity. And in the center, rising from the floor like a monolith, stood something impossible, a mirror. It didn't reflect her appearance. It reflected her choices. Every decision, every pain. Every time she chose the path she wasn't ready for. And standing in the reflection, not a duplicate, not a shadow, herself. Older, changed, and wearing Leviathan armor. The older Lyra spoke without moving her lips. I remember how this ends, and you're not ready. The real Lyra reached out to touch the mirror, and it shattered. Chapter 7. Fracture Point. The mirror shattered soundlessly, not into shards, but into moments. Each one hovered in the air like a floating thought. Lyra's face etched with resolve, flame thread bleeding from her fingers, the ash wake adrift in fire, Ral screaming through smoke, Kael falling with his blade drawn, a galaxy tearing itself apart at the seams. Lyra couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Each fragment pulled at her, demanded she choose. But something deeper whispered, "You already did." When she opened her eyes, she was no longer in the mirror chamber. She stood atop the second Leviathan itself. Its surface stretched like a plane of black glass, molten just beneath the skin. Every step she took sent memory ripples spiraling outward, echoes of lives she hadn't lived and futures she might still. Behind her, the rift had closed. Ahead, a structure rose from the Leviathan's spine. It was not made. It was grown. The bones of a forgotten warship twisted into the Leviathan's flesh. It pulsed with ancient flame thread, not from this galaxy, not even from this time. She stepped toward it, and the structure responded, not by opening, by singing. On the ash wake, alarms flared. Grief fought the controls as gravitational anomalies rippled through the hull. Kael stood at the viewport, eyes locked on the Leviathan's pulse. Ral gritted his teeth. This isn't a Leviathan. It's a weapon. Kael slowly turned his head. No, it's a vault, and she just opened it. Lyra reached the apex of the structure. Inside it, she found what looked like a throne, but not for a person. For an idea. Its surface shimmered with names, billions of them, written in burning language. Names of the lost, the forgotten, the erased. One of them was hers. But beneath hers was another, one she had never seen, the Forger. And just beneath that, flickering like a dying star, Awaken. Her fingers touched the throne, and the world screamed. A shockwave pulsed across the second Leviathan. The ash wake was thrown back, flames licking across its shields. Kael fell to one knee. Ral's voice was drowned by distortion. Gree passed out, but none of them saw what Lyra saw. She stood now inside the Leviathan's mind. Not a vision, a transfer. The flame didn't show her memories anymore. It gave them to her, and she saw the true origin of the flame, not as power, but as penance. The Leviathans, not builders nor gods, but survivors of a prior universe, folding their grief into memory just to exist. The galaxy as it is now, not born naturally, but built atop the ashes of something else. The gates were never meant to move ships. They were meant to keep something out, and the seal was failing. Lyra fell forward as it ended. The structure had gone quiet. The pulse of the Leviathan was slowing again. She opened her eyes and saw her reflection in the black glass. But it wasn't hers. It was the Forger, watching, waiting, and smiling. Chapter 8. The Forger's Wake. The reflection didn't vanish. It lingered in the black glass like a shadow that knew its name. The Forger looked like Lyra in shape only. Tayir, wreathed in ever-burning thread, eyes hollowed by time. A mark on her chest that pulsed in rhythm with the Leviathan beneath their feet. One heartbeat, then another, then silence. Lyra reached out, hand trembling. The moment her fingers touched the reflection, fire lanced through her. Not pain, remembrance. She was pulled from herself, from a Leviathan, from the galaxy, and dropped into something older than story. A forge, not a flame, of memory. Inside it, voices screamed, not in agony, but in refusal. A billion minds forced to choose what would be kept and what would be forgotten. She saw entire civilizations burn not from war, but from revision. Saw the Forger standing in the center of it all, alone, holding a pen made of flame and sorrow. Each stroke changed galaxies. Each silence unmade gods. And then the Forger turned, looked directly at her, and whispered, "I didn't forget you. You were the one story I couldn't erase." Lyra fell backward into her body with a gasp. She lay on the Leviathan's spine, her flame thread flickering chaotically. Alarm screamed from her suit. Her heart pounded like a war drum. Ralph's voice cracked through the comms. Lyra, respond, damn it. Are you alive? She coughed, then stood slowly. Not sure, but I remember now. On the Ashwake, Gree brought the sensors back online. The Leviathan's pulse had changed. It wasn't defensive anymore. It was broadcasting. Kael's jaw tensed. It's calling something. Ral turned from a console, pale. Or someone. Far across the void, beyond even the edge of the known galaxy, something stirred. A distant Leviathan gate, long dead, long forgotten, flared to life in absolute silence. It did not open fully. It peeled, like flesh, and from within, a ship emerged. It was not powered by flame thread. It was not made of steel. It was made of script, etched in the language of endings. And it had no crew, just a single pilot. And a name burned across its hull. The first rewrite. Back on the Leviathan, Lyra froze. She'd seen that name in the throne. Below the forger, above hers. The rewrite wasn't a theory. It was a directive, and it was coming for them. Chapter 9. When the rewrite arrives. Space twisted long before the rewrite ship arrived. The Leviathan beneath Lyra dimmed its pulse, its surface cooling, becoming still again, but not out of fear. Out of reverence, like a monument bracing for the return of its maker. The Ashwake drifted at a careful distance, shields flickering, caught between reverence and panic. Gree leaned forward, scanning the data feeds. The ship isn't emitting any power signature. It's not using flame thread. It's written. Ral muttered beside him. That doesn't make any sense. Kael stood at the command console, still as a statue. It's not a ship in the way we think of ships. It's a command. Lyra, standing once more atop the second Leviathan, stared into the dark horizon as the object crept closer, not by speed, but by proximity of meaning. Every moment it came closer, the air grew heavier. The world dimmed. Even the stars behind it flickered, as if uncertain they should still exist. She didn't wait. She stepped forward. The Leviathan did not stop her. The surface split beneath her feet, gently, and raised a platform of coiled memory thread. It shimmered under her boots like it recognized her, weaving itself into a path aimed straight toward the rewrite. She walked it alone. Ralph's voice crackled through the comms. Lyra, what the hell are you doing? She didn't answer. She couldn't explain it, not even to herself. She wasn't following a hunch. She was fulfilling a shape. The rewrite arrived in total silence. It did not halt. It simply became still, like the end of a sentence. It hovered just meters above the platform, its hull unreadable, its presence pressing against her skin like it was rewriting her line by line. Her thoughts began to blur. Words in her mind tried to unform. And then a voice, not hers, spoke inside her. Designation confirmed. Lida Vali. You are not yet overwritten. She clenched her fists. Then why are you here? The answer came like a verdict. Because you remembered. The rewrite began to unfold. Not physically. It opened conceptually, exposing something at its core. Something not alive, not sentient, but conscious. A network of choices. Moments that had once belonged to others. Now erased, now repurposed. In the center of it sat a throne of script. And a man. He looked no older than Lyra, but in his eyes were stars she'd never seen. The man stood. He wore no armor, no insignia, just a cloak made of forgotten names. His voice was quiet. You're not supposed to be here. She stepped forward. You're the forger? He shook his head slowly. No, I'm what comes after. The editor. Behind her, the Leviathan roared once. Its flame thread surged. Kael's voice came through sharply. Lyra, it's reacting. Do not engage. The editor raised his hand, and her comms died. He looked at her sadly. You weren't supposed to break the seal. She swallowed hard. Then why make me remember? He stepped down from the throne. I didn't. The flame did. It chose you. But I'm here to correct that. The sky split. Not in light. In logic. And everything began to reorder. Chapter 10. Redraft. The platform fractured beneath Lyra's feet, not broken by pressure, but rewritten by intent. The editor didn't move, but every breath he took rewrote a law. Every blink realigned causality. Around him, history curled like ash blown backward through time. Lyra's flame thread surged in resistance. It crackled, hissed, clawed its way through her body as if trying to burn a path through certainty. But the editor's presence was unshakable. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "This war has already been won and lost. We are simply erasing the parts that refuse to end." The Leviathan below her answered. Its heart burst with light, not violent, not wild, but ancient and pure. A slow pulse that echoed backward through the rewrite ship, freezing its reformatting cycle. Glyphs on its surface trembled. Lyra held her ground. "Then why am I still here?" The editor's expression shifted, something between pity and admiration. "Because you're a fracture, a contradiction. You shouldn't remember, but you do, and that makes you dangerous." Ralph's voice returned in a burst of static. "Lyra, we've got movement." "The Leviathan, it's transmitting again." Gree shouted behind him. "It's not a transmission. It's a call. Not for help. For kin. Break time equals 0. 5S, / beyond the shattered gate." Light bloomed. First one, then two, then three more Leviathans answered, rising from systems long thought sterile, ghosting through flame thread scars in space, each one broadcasting in silent unity. The rewrite shuddered, and the editor's eyes finally showed something other than calm. Surprise. "You called them," he said, stunned. "You know, the flame called them through you." Lyra stepped forward. "Not all Leviathans chose to forget. And I'm not alone anymore." The editor raised his hand. "Then let me show you what it means to remember everything." Time shattered, not metaphorically. The world around her broke into scenes, moments pulled from the editor's memory. Cities melting under script fire, planets restructured mid-thought, entire cultures replaced like paragraphs in a draft. And in the center of it all, the editor kneeling before the first flame, begging, not to be chosen, to be forgiven. Back in the present, Lyra staggered. The visions tore through her, but her flame thread flared and held. She wasn't him. She wasn't here to erase. She was here to ignite. She screamed and cast the flame outward, not as a weapon, but as truth. The rewrite ship convulsed. The editor stepped back, shielding his eyes. "You're not ready." She met his gaze. "Neither were you." The Leviathans roared in unison. Reality reknit itself around her. The editor vanished, yanked back into the warp of his collapsing construct. The rewrite began to dissolve, not in fire, but in narrative rejection. The flame had spoken, and Lyra Vale had become its voice. The ash-wake raced forward, catching her in a retrieval beam seconds before the platform gave way. Ralph's voice cracked. "You okay?" She exhaled. "No, but I think the galaxy just remembered how to fight." Chapter 11-12. The Shattered Seal. The Ashwake's engines roared as they escaped the collapsing platform, but Lyra's mind was elsewhere, still tangled in the echo of the editor's collapse, still burning with the flame thread that now surged like a wildfire within her veins. Kael's voice cut through the tension. "We barely made it. That wasn't just a battle. It was an unraveling." Ral stood beside the viewport, staring into the widening rift where the rewrite ship had been. Gone. But not erased. Not entirely. Below them, the Leviathans stirred like ancient gods rousing from centuries of slumber. Their eyes, vast and glowing, open one by one, not in unison, but in question. Lyra sat heavy in the command chair, pulse racing. The flame inside her whispered, warning and promise intertwined. The seal isn't just broken. It's fractured. Pieces scattered across time and space, across realities not yet touched. And something else. A darkness. Suddenly, alarms blared. Sensors screamed. Grease shouted through static. Incoming. Not one, not two, but a fleet. Ships unlike any they'd ever seen. Not human, not Leviathan. Something else. Shadowed, angular, and pulsing with cold energy. Kael's jaw tightened. The editor wasn't working alone. Whatever he unleashed was only the beginning. Ralph's voice trembled. We've got to prepare. But Lyra's gaze remained fixed on the growing void beyond the rift. The flame burned bright and fierce. She understood now. The war was no longer just for survival. It was for memory, for identity, for the right to exist. And the true enemy was still coming. The Ashwake charged forward, engines blazing toward the unknown. Lyra's final thought before plunging into the darkness was clear. This is only the beginning. Stay tuned and subscribe to get notified when Part 6 of this 20-part series is released.